Three, two, one. Welcome to Vibe Check with Dewufi. That's me. And Les Gray, the legend, as far as I'm concerned, at least, with some legendary moments on Farcaster already. But I was talking to you, Les, a little bit before we got this recording going, and I'm just so excited to talk to you because I feel like you have this thing that pulls the best out of a lot of people, myself included. So thanks for taking the time. Welcome to the pod. And I'd really just like to start off with maybe some personal history as it relates to Farcaster, who you are, what you're working on, because while I think a lot of the Farcaster audience is, homogenous and knows a lot of these things, I'd be remiss if I'm not honest that I'm trying to include more people into a lot of things that some of us already know. I want to set the context for why this conversation is going to be interesting and what led you to become who you are, particularly on Farcaster.
Oof, man, starting off hard.
No, we're starting off easy. It's gonna get harder.
I think the way I normally, like when people tell me how I got on Farcaster, I feel like that story, which I revisited yesterday in Miami Farcaster community meetup. And I always kind of go back to like how like simple it was to like, okay, I just asked Dan for an invite. He gave me an invite. I logged on, and like the rest is kind of like, like almost like uneventful. Like, and then little by little, I was engaging in this community that is Farcaster, and as I did that, I realized that I was engaging with a community that was like drastically different, drastically like way further out there than who I had ever envisioned myself to be. And as I did that, I started to like grow. So who am I on Farcaster? I would say I'm like a Farcaster native. I'm a Farcaster grown, maybe even a Farcaster like reborn kind of person. Like I have taken a lot of what I've learned about technology and just from Farcaster. A lot of what I've learned about Web3, the things that I'm working on, even becoming a founder, I would say, stems from my interactions and engagement with people on Farcaster. Like that is the, like, to think about who I am today is like, to me, the epitome of saying like, okay, you went to a school, you met a bunch of people, you interacted with them, and then when you graduated, you are this person. And so like I've made this joke many times actually before Farcaster had its growth. Is like, well, I'm at Farcaster U, or like I'm on like this is Farcaster University. Like me talking to so many people in the community constantly on a day in day out, like those things made me believe that digital communities can't exist. Like they can exist, they are very real, and the people behind the keyboards are actually not just anons, they're people that have actual value. And when they are put in an environment that like they want to put that stuff out there, it changes the other person on the other side. And so like who am I is a big part of like who was early Farcaster, what did I learn from them, like, and I could probably like just give you a list of names of people that those are, but I don't think that's the point. But like who am I is to probably say like, oh, that's I'm early Farcaster. I'm now like a founder. I don't hold myself out as a founder anymore. I hold myself on more as like an on-chain creator. And I work in the space of fashion and technology.
What's the difference between a founder and an on-chain creator?
What I have found is just that the word founder to me creates this resonance of like how I think founders maybe look at the role or the title of CEO today.
And you don't
And so it's not that I don't resonate with it. It's just that I feel like there's friction when you talk about as a founder that puts you in a specific it kind of pins you at a specific spot.
Silicon Valley backed, trying to build $1 billion company.
Correct. And I think what on-chain does is that it allows a subset of that, essentially, of like you're on-chain creator, you're like writing history to the block, right? And and you're at a different stage. You're managing a vertical, like a vertical integration of an organization, and you play a bunch of different roles because you can do so much. And so like it's just like, yeah, I see a creator and I see, okay, like this creative component of product development, and you're doing things in a frontier, which is like blockchains and Web3 and crypto, and you're also, I also see like almost like a historian, like because we're literally some of the first people doing stuff on the blockchain. Like if you go outside of our circle, I was having this conversation yesterday. We go outside of our circle, you say the word like blockchain, they're like, what is that? It's like, oh, Ethereum. I think I've heard of that. Bitcoin? Yeah, I think I've heard of Bitcoin. It's like, okay, oh yeah, the thing, the price goes up and down. And it's like, never mind. Like, just like,
Never mind. I don't have
never
the time.
mind.
I graduated from Farcast to you. I'm off to PhD.
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
I love you. I respect everything you do, but it's literally like me trying to talk to like a theoretical physicist with a PhD, right? They're like quarks and stuff. I'm like, I'm gonna go watch the 10-minute YouTube explainer, and like that's good for me, right? Like I have an interest in it, but the deep understanding is different.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that. I was actually talking to Devin about this, and I don't know how much of this stuff you follow. It'll be fun to get into these things. That's been one of the fun parts of the conversation. So like digging deeper and having an excuse to like learn about my friends more. But we were talking about how like, you know, the All In podcast and the VC sort of like messaging today is very much like AI is going to change everything. Blockchain is going to change everything. There's going to be these small, scrappy businesses that are like $10 million run by 3 people, seed rounds. Maybe that's it. Like no more like, but then like you look at what's getting funded or how people feel about the term founder. And it's like, okay, everyone's still trying to raise their big money. VCs still have billions of dollars to deploy, and they're not going to get it done like $1 or $2 million at a time. So it's interesting to see how long or how difficult it is to shift like a giant community's perspective, and giant in the sense that there's a lot of people, but also there's just a lot of capital and like emotion invested into this like thing, Web 2, like these are the way things are done. And I find that it's pretty rare to find people who not only think outside of that box, but are willing to act on it. And I think probably that's one of like the most bullish things about Farcaster is even if there's more noise now, even if there's more meme coins, and no matter what you think about that, although that might be interesting to talk to you about actually in a second, no matter what you think about all those things and like, you know, signal to noise ratios, Farcaster is still today, without a doubt in my mind, the probably anywhere, online or offline, highest concentration of like truly orthogonal thinkers, like people who are really not just like intellectually like waxing poetic about what the future could be, but like genuinely trying what can only be described as crazy shit, like absolutely off the wall stuff. And I feel like you've got something to say about that.
Yeah, so I mean, there's 2 things that I think you're saying there. One is like the VC thing, and so like I was trying to hold that in my thought, and then the second thing was like that kept coming to me is like, what is this Farcaster community? And as a matter of fact, Adrian's probably going to be doing a lightning talk, I think, at Farcon about this, like the Cineus.
Yeah, the Cineus. Yeah.
Cineus. I butcher words all the time, so forgive me. And I think what you're saying on the second point there is kind of goes more towards what she talks about. And then I normally kind of comment in terms of like what I have experienced as an outsider coming into this Cineus and like learning what I have learned.
But hold on, like there's literally no one besides you that would consider yourself an outsider at this point. I think it's fair to say, right? Like I got dunked on at the first part. And you're a very kind person. I don't think this was you, but there were some other people that I hold near and dear to my heart that were dunking on me pretty hard for having a 4-digit FID at Farcon 1. They're like, dude, what took you so long?
Yeah, yeah, that is true. That is very true. And Farcon 1 and Farcon 2 feel like drastically different eras.
Tell me more
already.
about how you're feeling about it.
About Farcon 2 or Farcon 1?
The difference, 1, 2, whatever, Farcons in general.
So I'm shocked at I'm shocked that going from what FarCon 1 was like 100 people.
I think Cam said he ballparks it at 70.
70. All right,
Yeah.
so let's round it up to 100 people. Let's give it 30 extra people some passes. And now I just heard a number that it's 715 1,000. Like, is that growth the same to where we were at FarCon 1 in terms of Farcaster, where I don't know, maybe like 30,000 FIDs were registered. Um, and then now we're at over 200,000 FIDs registered. So like, are those equivalent? Like how I feel about FarCon 2 really is that I was a bit behind the scenes earlier on. I kind of dropped off because I wasn't properly contributing, and I think I was kind of just holding the team back. And the way I feel is like the people behind the scenes have busted their ass to give one probably an amazing experience, and I think the size of the number of people that are going is reflecting that. I think with that comes some trade-offs that it's like it doesn't have the same community feel.
Yep.
But at the same time, you kind of look at that and it's like, well, does it actually deserve more? And so like it's not for me to answer that. It's like the community to answer that, right? And so like it's like, does it I think there's a future where like both of those things can exist, where you have like these massive, like they're not very community sensing, although the side events try to pull those things together. But like trying to get there and to do all those events it makes it very difficult. Like I want to spend time with everyone, right? But at the same time, I want to slow down.
Yeah.
That's my view on that. So I think FarCon 2 is a very different experience, and I think it's going to be fascinating to feel like how the community thrives on that particular experience. And then people that are going to be there from FarCon 1 are going to compare, and they're going to be like, well, maybe something in the middle is going to be more my vibe. And I think that's what's going to come of those kinds of experiences as we grow. I mean, Farcaster is only like what, 3-4 years old, so to have this scale of interaction, this scale of interest, this scale of people wanting to go to an event like FarCon 2, I think is like fantastic. Like it's like I would definitely say it's a success for the team that was planning it.
Yeah. It's abundantly clear that Ted, Graham, Erica, and I know there's some other people involved, but those are the ones who I see pop up the most. Graham B. McBain have like pulled off something. I don't even, to be honest, I don't get the impression that even they expected this, right? Which is like always how it is.
I'm sure.
It was the same thing with Grin and Cam. They did not expect 70. I don't think. I think they they did their research and they did their best, but it ended up being considerably more and more interesting. I think, and I'm curious to get your take on this too. One of the very interesting dynamics that have been noteworthy, I think, playing out are the Farcaster influencer, KOL, whatever, right? That are not Farcaster native, I would say. And that's not a judgment. That's not like a good or bad thing. But there seems to be some sort of bifurcation, or more than two ways. The community is fragmenting, and that's natural as it grows, right?
Yeah.
That's totally. But there is this like the rebirthers and the FC grown folk, right? Of which again we don't need to like name names. And then there's sort of other groups of like that have come from outside but have found new homes on Farcaster despite already having a home elsewhere. Right. So I sort of defined the group as like almost everyone didn't have a Twitter following, wasn't like working on the protocol, right? Didn't have any connection to Dan or V. And then that's starting to shift, because I was looking at the guest list and there's like, what I would call like minor celebrities like going to be in town basically, right? And it's going to be very interesting, I think, to watch what people do instead of what people say, because what people espouse outwardly they want. This is Dan's. I'm remiss if I can't get in a revealed versus stated preference. Like
stated. That's a design. Yeah.
Do you want to be at the 100-person dinner? Go off, king, queen. Like, do what you want to do. Are you looking for like deep connection with like 3 of your friends? Like, no one's stopping you. It's not a real conference in the sense of like, you know what I mean? It's an unconference still. I think that stays. And what you said about the middle ground, I'm sure there's going to be, like, I'm actually positive at this point there will be multiple FarCons a year. There'll probably be another FarCon this year, would be my guess. And then by next year, we're having 3 to 4 or 5 per year for different communities.
Mhm.
And it's like, are you going to FarCon East or FarCon West this year? Oh, I'm going to both,
Yeah.
right? Like, are you going to FarCon Singapore? Like it's happening pretty quickly.
But yeah, funny you say that, because I had the same similar thought. I was like, oh, we should just have a FarCon Miami. And
yeah,
so yeah,
Chicago's talking about the same thing. Chicago definitely. Chicago is funny because we're a huge city with no presence. Like it's just like the Midwest like thing, right? Just like lay low, grow some corn. Like that's the vibe we always have. People forget like what a large city we are, I think, sometimes. So we'll see how all that goes. I want to take this idea of like there's different tribes and like different communities and fractioning, and I think a big part of what I want to get to on this podcast is definitely the insights that people like yourself have into sort of finding a tribe, finding people that want to hear what you have to say. I have a feeling we'll start to dip our toes into the authenticity conversation at this point, which I think is extremely important. If you could just wax a little bit about if you've done anything intentional to sort of cultivate a community around you, whether that be for World Builder Jacket or otherwise, if things have been serendipitous and have worked really well, that you did not set out to do something, but you found a voice and audience on Farcaster through something. I think there's a lot of people out there that are sort of searching or curious about how to do that. And my hot take, just to, and maybe it's not even that hot, my take is very much that because the identity is so prevalent when you tie effectively a wallet, but let's call it what it is. It's like it's a historical lore of what you've done over the past to your post history. You lose a lot of the troll incentive. You lose a lot of the negativity. You lose a lot of the anon stuff because there's so much value in having an active badge and getting an OG NFT or something like that, right? Like people are now incentivized to be a little more authentic, is my take. But anything that you have to share and riff on that topic, I think is part of what I want to get out into the world with this.
Yeah. I don't know if my situation is unique or not. I really don't. I normally approach.
Yeah, I'd encourage you not to worry about what's unique or like what's helpful. Just say your experience. Give your authentic take on what's been happening with you, because it's not going to be for everyone, but I promise it'll be for someone.
But here's why I'm actually saying it. I think it's less to do for what you're talking about. I think it has more to do with like what I'm gonna kind of follow up with, which is like the reason I'm starting with like whether my take or my approach is unique or not is because I think that is that underpins the idea that I haven't really intentionally approached this in any specific way. I have just kind of felt my way through the landscape as I have moved, and I don't think it was until more recently that I have started to say, okay, I need to be more intentional. I need to be more precise. I need to be more pointed, and not so much at a destination, but more so at like at direction.
Yes.
All right, and so ever since I got onto Farcaster, I would say I always tried very hard to be authentic, even though I wasn't intentionally trying to be authentic. And I think one of the reasons that I felt as connected to Farcaster as I did and the community was because when I was authentic there, I felt like there was a feedback loop, and the feedback loop was just positive. And I don't mean in the sense of like people actually telling me things. I meant even in the absence of things, like people would not engage on your stuff if it sucked. People will engage on your stuff if they had a take. People will respond very lightly if they're pressed for time, but they like your stuff. You get me? Like the signal in Farcaster very early on was very, very nuanced in a way where like that kind of contributed to my own authentic self, which is like, okay, I wasn't searching for anything in particular, but I resonated with people within the community. I said like, and this is where I think memes, like we could probably go off on a tangent with memes on this. It's like
Yeah.
this is where memes are so powerful. It's like I respected people on there because of the conversations that were being had. Therefore, I mimicked some of the stuff, found what I found useful, internalized those things that I found useful, and then I just continued on that path, like dun 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 dun. And so that's kind of what's led me to the founder path. Obviously, there's personal decisions on my end. That's kind of what has led me down the path that I'm in, with like fashion and bridging it with technology. Like I can't. I remember I was at FarCon before FarCon one. I had a lunch with Chris Carell, and I was like, Chris, what advice do you have to give me? I have a presentation, and he said this. He goes, dude, just be authentic. And I'll be honest, like I heard that, I'm like, cool, simple. Like you hear that all the time, right? You hear that all the time. And and you don't really like in my mind, I never really understood what it meant. Like I really didn't. I would probably say until the last 4 or 5 months. And I went and I did that presentation authentically. I mean, you gave me like one of the kindest feedbacks. You know, you're like you essentially said something to the effect of like, I've never seen anybody put a presentation together minutes before they give the presentation. And I never rehearsed any of that presentation.
I want to be
Uh,
sorry. That almost makes it sound like you rushed it. I want to be clear.
no, no,
'Cause
no, 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 no. But like, you don't even need to make that disclaimer because I didn't rush it. Like, the story is constantly evolving, and that's
that
what
was
I'm
the
trying to
point.
say
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The point was the
yeah,
story was so like whenever
yes,
you see a presentation, you feel like so often it's rehearsed and it's like trying to get you to do something. And that's fine for like a TED talk. Like you want polish. This was something different. You literally had pictures from that morning, I believe, from like literally like 10 minutes before you were dropping in.
mhm.
You're like, this is the story that we're building today. I thought it was brilliant. I still do.
And to me, I think that is the essence of your question, which is like, am I doing anything intentionally? I think the most intentional thing I'm doing is putting things publicly. And what I've realized through the course of my whole time on Farcaster is that every time I have done something public, to include this presentation, to launch the jacket, to announce something, to launch something, to put myself in the position of like, shit, like I have to give something because I put myself out there. Something better has always come of it.
Yeah.
And um, the thing I would say that's most intentional for me is like, and this is something that I learned from literally like the Farcaster team, like when I used to attend their product meetings, like all across the board, it's like build in public. Okay. And what
Yeah.
happens when you build in public? It forces you to be authentic because people are going to shun you when you're not authentic. And then what I realize about that whole authenticity aspect of it is like you have to find the flow of your authentic self. And that's what I have found through like the process of being on Farcaster. Um, and I mean, I sound like a Farcaster go boy at this point, um, um, but I think to your question about like what about my story kind of lends to the authenticity argument, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's the building in public, the like just put it out there kind of mentality that enforced this like feedback loop. And it wasn't me just chasing anything specifically because I definitely wasn't chasing fashion. I'll tell you that. There's something that led me to that. I wasn't chasing technology and how I'm approaching it today. There's something that led me to that. I wasn't chasing being a founder. There's something that led me. I wasn't chasing to be a creator. Something led me to that. And
Yeah.
so, like all these components of just being my authentic self, learning myself, learning who I am, learning what I'm doing, learning it with a community, growing with a community. I think that is what allowed me to emerge into this thing that I'm working on now. And it's really about being, I mean, vulnerable to a certain degree. So like, and I think that's the hard part. Like that's the hardest part. It's like shit. Like putting yourself out there is being very vulnerable, especially when you're building the story. Like I had to write a lot of dumb shit on Farcaster to figure out what people did not like. Like there's people that unfollow me because they're like, what the this guy just posts a ton of shit, but just a ton of notes, right?
Yeah.
And I get that. Like, but I can't stop doing that if that's who I am, right? And so like I get some people are not gonna like it, and that's very respectable. Like I can totally admire that they would even be willing to unfollow me, because even that in itself is like, you're human, right? Like, man, I don't want to tell this guy he's a piece of shit, but sorry, pink, you know. Uh and I and again, I think that people on Farcast are so respectful that they would rather not do that, but they're very considerate of their time and attention, right? And so like because they're considerate of their time and attention to their authentic self, then it harvests like this community of people that are just, hey, you be who you are, and shit will kind of unravel. You build in public, and guess what? Maybe I don't like you today, but in 6 months you might not be posting crap, and I'll like you then. you know and so like it's really a search. Like it's a constant search. It never stops.
Yeah.
It's like you have to lead into that authentic self just long enough to get over the hurdles that it's going to cause a ton of pain. I will say
Right.
that. Like I've gone through it. I've gone through, and I'm still going through a ton of pain. But I will say that all that journey that I've had through all those pains and continued pains, like all of them have been some of the biggest lessons I've learned. Like
Yeah.
unquestionably. It's like the path, the obstacle is the way kind of mentality. Like that is absolutely true through the authenticness of like being in an authentic community.
I couldn't agree more, man. And like, I find this popping up more and more, and like I'm starting to believe in it as just like a truth of the universe type thing. Like whether you're talking about casts, whether you're talking about your product, whether you're talking about a podcast
Yeah.
that you decided to launch for some reason. I still don't have full genesis of why I'm doing this thing, but
It's
like
vibes, bro.
vibes, just straight vibes.
Vibes.
Yeah, just straight vibes. Like
Straight vibes.
it can't be for everyone. Like it's an insane idea, right?
Oh.
Like sure, I mean maybe part of this goes back to like the fundraising and like, the value extraction of like Web2 data models and stuff like that. We can get very concrete, but I think on like a vibier, like just like hand wavy type thing, like it's insane to think that everyone has to like you or should follow you, right? Like it's actually, if everyone's following you, then it's nothing, right? Like then it's completely washed of its value. Like what you excise, what you remove is critically important. Whether, and again, like back to like art, like if you're creating a clay sculpture, whatever it is, like what you are taking away is just as important as what you're leaving. And in an effort to be more vulnerable, excuse me, an effort to be like more vulnerable and like authentic on my own podcast, like yeah, sometimes I look at other people's follower account and like, what the shit? Like, dude, I thought my stuff was pretty good, but apparently it's not. And then, I'll take a breath and I'll meditate and I'll think to myself, no, the people who are following me because they want to follow me, and chasing numbers or something else will only create, like, the best case scenario is it creates an inauthentic audience, which doesn't have value to me or them, right? Like then it's flighty, it booms around. This is like part of the problem with like meme coins and capital, just like sloshing, right? It's like it's like fully just like riding extremely short-term waves in hyper speed mode. I think there's some value there in terms of like lessons learned, but my guess is the arc of history will not be particularly kind to flashes in the pan of purely monetary results. Broadly speaking, we tend to hold in very high regard things that impact culture a lot more. And like money can do that for sure. But like, I don't think Farcaster is going to get remembered for better or for worse for making a lot of people rich. I suspect deeply that if it's remembered for the long term, and there's a book written about it or whatever the fuck we have in 200 years, it will be remembered as something that sort of switched the incentives on for authenticity online in a way that's like, to be blunt, as someone who's sort of perpetually online, I don't think we've seen it before. I think that's something that that is sort of the genius of Dan that goes underappreciated?
So the first thing I'm going to say is, I think followers are going to be the new phone books. Phone books are
Okay,
useful.
we're gonna have to dig into that. Okay.
Yeah, so phone
More.
books are useful, of course. It's like the early days of following. I have your phone number, you have my phone number. It's a one-way or two-way kind of directional kind of interaction, right? I can call you, but you can't call me until I call you. Back in the day, you couldn't call me if I called you because you needed to know, but you needed to actually dial my number, right? You didn't have caller ID, right? So um, some of you might not ever. Oh, there you go. Um, so, but now you have 1,000 phone numbers, and you might have those phone numbers on those people might have your phone number, you have their phone number, but you only could dial 10 people,
Yeah.
right? Like, you look it up, whatever. And I think followers is going to go the same way. Like, yes, like I think what you said there about having everyone follow you or everyone kind of like your stuff it's too burdensome. And I think what ends up happening is that um, the protocols like Farcaster, the ability to literally parallel technology that enables very minute action driven kind of cultural behavior, which is some of the things that like I work on, to be able to drive that closer to the ground, like at the human level, is going to unlock, like what you're saying, unlock this design space that creates a very rich and interactive world that is between blockchains, between decentralized protocols, and like the stuff that we already know and do right now. And so like it's about really like unbundling, I think, a lot of these things to create a new composition of interactions. And so I don't know where I was going with that, but you took me through your own thoughts of like all those things, and I felt like I was trying to like compress all of that down into like this like kind of small thing. But like where should we go with that?
We should go, because we are running a little close to time now, and I'm trying to be cognizant of both yours and the listeners, because as much as I love everyone on Farcaster, I do think it's a little silly when people are like, just dropped a 5-hour video, everyone should go watch it, there's a ton of value in there. So I'm trying to keep these digestible for people and really cram in the good content. I want to talk about composition of interactions, and I want, selfishly, for you to pump your own bags a little bit, because it's very on brand for Farcaster people to not want to talk about their own project. Like, it's like one of the hallmarks of like being Farcaster native is you were trained not to shill, because you got shit.
I mean, I'm showing. You're showing. I started by showing.
I know, and I do appreciate that, but we need to tell a little bit, I think, because it's a podcast. And on a podcast, I do think telling is the showing a little bit. Like, the point is the conversation sometimes. And the way that I've been thinking about it and framing it is like, okay, none of my Farcaster friends want to talk about their own projects. That's fine. We're going to spend the majority of the conversation having a very, what I hope is interesting and valuable discussion. And then that sort of bleeds into the last 5 minutes of, hey, if you've been listening to this and you think these ideas are cool, you are nodding your head to a lot of what Les is saying, this is resonating with you, and you want to know what he's working on. Les, what are you working on? What is World Builder? Tell me about the purple jacket. Give the people what they want. They want to know these things. And I think very specifically, it's definitely time, if there's anything you want people to do, and not like broadly, like, I want people to be more authentic, but I mean, like, if they're interested, if this is resonating with them, should they reach out? Who's your audience? And specifically as it relates to World Builder, what's going on the inspirational side that people should be looking at if they've found the past 30 minutes to be beneficial to their life in some way?
Yeah. Fuck, dude, that's a hard fucking question, man. You got a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
mean,
things there. You got a lot of things there. So let me just try to start somewhere.
start wherever is
I
natural.
I would say world builder. I would say world builder is once again an idea that I extracted from the Farcaster community. And it's like I have two kids. I have a wife. I have parents. Um, they're in there, and I think about all the things that I've done wrong. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean like, hey, like I've done things wrong, right? Like, and there's things that I've seen that are that I too easily kind of dismissed. And that's why I started my FarCon presentation with the big red wrong, right? Like
Yeah.
there's these interpretations of the world that I've had that were, in my opinion, wrong. And one of those things is fashion. Another thing was technology. And so, like, as I have gone and explored those things and come onto Farcaster, the Farcaster they're seeing, um, I extracted this idea of world building. Like, like if you see a world and you want to build that thing, like you go out and you seek the path to that thing. And I learned that, like I said, from Farcaster. And so, like, as I was kind of researching these two topics in fashion technology, I realized like so many people shun this idea of fashion, and to include myself. um, and as I studied fashion, I realized okay, technology would not exist without fashion. Like it's like fashion was it's like the thing that came after humans were born, put clothes on, and it tells one of the most inclusive stories of civilization. Like they're like if you look at fashion, you literally remove pretty much every boundary of anything. Like you sex change, whatever, like colors, like it doesn't matter. Like you're telling the most inclusive story you can. And so like for me, world builder has become this idea of trying to build a specific world that I want to see for like my people, my family, like like be involved, building a family business because my family's in this space as well. And so like I merged that with technology, and I saw this gap in technology that viewed fashion drastically different. And so like World Builder, the actual jacket is like a annual collection that I will be building to resemble like the design principles of what is Web3 through clothes. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is like, how do I build like high end couture, essentially, apparel that creates this like deep classic connection with an interactive, like online, on chain kind of design with the clothes that we wear. Like if I were to go to a conference with my Farcaster jacket, like this one here, could I, without pulling out my phone, feel luxurious and like being able to just hand over my social media or like a POAP or like anything, right? Like, but not without having to pull my phone out. And so like I'm trying to design this rich interactive space between clothing and on-chain behaviors, um, through obviously technology. And it starts with like the World Builder collection, essentially. Like I started with these jackets because I needed the confidence that Farcaster gave me by Purple funding this jacket here. And then I kind of went out, put myself in public a little bit more, and started to sell this jacket or this jacket. And that kind of that the support from the community is really what's given me like the confidence of like, okay, fashion is something that is desired. There is a gap here, right? And so like I'm trying to fill some of that gap with World Builder. Um, yeah, I don't know if any of that works, but um,
It
that's what
worked.
I'm trying to do with World Builder. It's an annual capsule collection ode to the Farcaster builders ethos.
Is there a way to still get a jacket, or you locked up?
It's locked up, but maybe after this we can talk.
Maybe we'll do a drop for the couple podcast listeners I have, and it'll be a truly a limited run of lore building stuff. Because that's the other thing that I've been thinking about. Just to sort of wrap this up, I want to get your thoughts on this. I find frequently that the magic is happening where we're not looking. And that's like very like specifically sometimes um monetarily, like with the OG NFT, right? Like
Mm.
there's all this stuff happening. I got an Oxen Castaway because at the first ETH Denver Farcaster meetup, they were like, win this NFT if you take a selfie with it. And there was like, I don't know, 150 people there. And then Oxen messaged me, goes, hey, only 2 of you did it. So instead of raffling, I'm just gonna each give you one. And that thing's worth like almost half an ETH now or something, I think, right? It's like, to go back to the authenticity thing, it's like, I'm not saying you can't make money trading or anything like that. There's a million ways to make money, but like truly like magical experiences, the stuff that like I'm emotionally connected to now in my wallet, a lot of it is just like happenstance. I'd love to hear
On
if you have
that
any
thread,
comments.
though,
Yeah.
yeah. So like, I think that is the power of like meme coins, because what I think we're so easily like dismissing, and I get into some of these design concepts, like when I do stuff with like the jacket, is that the idea is to be able to allow people to live their authentic selves more genuinely by being able to have this sense of abundance. That sense of abundance right now comes from money, right? Like, and what I think meme coins and blockchains are going to start being able to do. I mean, this is a far out into the future, but what they're going to be able to start doing is they're going to be able to gap, like bridge the gap between this thing that we call abundance and this thing that we call money, and people not being able to live their authentic selves because they're always focused on the money element. But then when we abstract the money elements of these things by creating experiences, by creating connections, by essentially fabricating this like layer between interactions, people can't get paid for these things. And it's like it's unreasonable. It's unreasonable to think that that if we really believe in like this idea of authenticity and like being genuine, that that authenticity doesn't have value, and then the only thing we describe value with is a dollar sign or you know, an emoji, or you get me, like there has to be there has to be something that bridges the gap between abundance and money. And I think that is technology to a large degree, but at the same time that technology comes in the form of like other types of money. And other types of money are things like meme coins. They're like the ability for like very expeditious interactions to have monetary value.
Mm.
And so like I don't think it's out of this world to say like, hey, money still plays a like money is absolutely going to play a factor. How we monetize things is still going to be a very big factor. The question is how we monetize them. I don't know if I just said the same thing, but like how we monetize them is going to be the thing that feels different. Um, and you know, NFTs, you know, crypto tokens, ERC-721s, 1155s, whatever. You know, um, no, um, I definitely don't want to would not want to shy away from the idea that like it's not. I want to lean into the idea that it is okay to monetize. Like even if I struggle with the idea like of
You have
monetizing.
to. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're not
you
gonna be able
have
to
to.
create more, is that right? Like you
Yeah.
can't, like you're not gonna be able to share more if you don't monetize. And I think people get caught up in the web to like extracting value out of systems, like you know, this whole like give it all away for free, take everyone, and like that's the way it worked. But the true like, and this is the way I think about like business development and sales as well. It's like the true way to think about the world is that like if you're putting in work, you're creating value. And just because there's exchange of value happening, you know, left to right, up to down, does not necessarily mean that it's not accretive. It doesn't mean that you're not generating something. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be rewarded for it. You should be rewarded as much as you possibly can be for, especially for this authenticity, especially for great content, especially for fashion that lets people tell their own story the way they love to.
Mhm.
Like people, if you create something great, like people should be like absolutely fucking thrilled to pay you for it. And you should be excited to get it because that's, today it's dollars and it's got sort of an icky feel around it, but like that is really sort of the basis of like connection and value exchange. right? And like there's a lot of different ways to do it, but yeah, like reward yourself, get a ton. It's proof to the world that like great things can happen from like sharing value with a community, with your loved ones, with whoever it may be.
I'll try to wrap my own thought around that, which is the like I haven't made any money from my last year of my like my creative endeavor, business endeavor. At the same time, I don't think I was really doing the best job at creating that money. Um, I, however, was creating something internally on myself that allowed me to be more authentic, which is what goes back to like the thing that I said. Like I just kind of really, like I really learned the whole authentic thing in about like last 2 or 3 months. There's a whole other story there, but I think the important part that I want to highlight is that it wasn't until I found this connection with that authentic self that allowed me to actually wrap my head around the monetization value of that authentic self. Where before I couldn't see the monetization value. And I had to bridge that to be able to understand okay, the monetization is okay to exist. And the reason I just bring that up is because it's not about monetizing today. It's about monetizing the right, authentic self. Because if you monetize too early, you lose yourself, and you're done. Like that authentic self doesn't emerge because now you're dependent on that capital, and where that capital comes from is like, I mean, I'm reluctant to say this, but it's almost modern day slavery, you know, like so it's like if it's the job, like even Taleb talks about how the current world, employment world works, which is connected to like he says slavery and stuff like that. So like, um, uh, but if you go down that lineage of thought, it's like when you become this free self, like the most expressive free self, and you connect yourself to that and your identity to that, and you realize that hey, this identity has value, and the way that value needs to be represented for me to continue to live it, it's through this thing called money. uh there is like there I think you really start creating like this other level of freedom that
Yeah.
doesn't come from money, that comes from like creativity, and
And
creation and destruction and world building.
yeah,
So yeah.
absolutely, man. I think that's the bombshell to end it on. This has been a pleasure. Get out there, be authentic, charge for it be authentic and charge for it is the name of the episode. Les, man, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your thoughts. Absolute pleasure. DC's open, I assume. That's what most people say. If they want to ask you a question about something, be helpful, be kind, be nice. Take care of the network. It's the only one we've got until we get another one. But yeah, man, any closing thoughts, or are you good?
I want to thank you for always being a good friend. So
I appreciate that deeply, sir. See y'all later.
Peace.